SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.
What's the key to discovering delectable dining? Find something that sizzles, a time-tested favorite, a feast for your eyes and palate, and a dining experience handled with care. In Vicksburg, the key to the South.
He's joined us many times before. Ben McKee, GoVols247, covers the Tennessee Volunteers and been doing so for a long time. I know you guys talked to Josh Heupel earlier this week. When we talked to Jeff Lebby and asked him about his relationship with Heupel, I think the term was, I have more respect for him than anybody else in this business. That's pretty high praise when you consider how coaches work and operate. What did Heupel have to say about his relationship with the Mississippi State head coach?
Yeah, he had a lot of good things to say as well. And this is kind of the second time this season that Josh Heupel has gone through something this unique. That's his favorite word to use. He used it earlier this week in saying it will be very unique on Saturday because he shared meeting rooms with not only Jeff Lebby, but a lot of other staff members on Mississippi State staff as well. And that was kind of his go-to word back in September when Tennessee was playing Oklahoma, and not just the familiarity of him going back to his alma mater, but working with Coach Venables and then now coaching against him. So Josh Heupel is experienced. He's still not a man of very many words. He's not. he has an awesome personality. He just does not like doing media, so he doesn't necessarily let it show in those settings. But a lot of great things to say. Just a couple of moments ago in the SEC teleconference, he talked about how Coach Lebby is just very smart, high IQ, great football mind, and really gave him kudos for how Mississippi State has gotten better over the course of this season. Maybe not necessarily in the win-loss column, but you can see them making strides offensively, still playing hard despite the record, and he kind of chalked that up to just the respect that Coach Lebby commands and his football IQ and how people kind of gravitate towards him. So Josh Heupel's had a lot of great things to say about Jeff Lebby this week.
I'm not trying to toot my own horn, I promise, but when we talked back in the summer, I told you I was very high on Tennessee. I thought they were going to be a playoff contender. So far that has held up for the Volunteers, but they're doing it in a different way. You know, you think Josh Heupel and you think, man, they're going to be moving up and down the field and all those big plays. This has become a nasty defensive team. How surprised are you to see this new identity for Tennessee?
I'm not surprised that the defense is what it is. I'm more surprised that the offense has been plagued as much as it has been. The defense has been building year by year. Now, did I think that they were going to take this big of a step this soon? No, I still kind of thought they were maybe a year away from having the potential to be one of the best defenses in the SEC. And now all of a sudden they have one of the best defenses, not just in the SEC, but in the entire country. And you can make the case that they are the best defense in the entire country. Certainly the defensive line, that's kind of where it all starts. So I am a bit surprised that they're this good ahead of schedule. But there were signs, the way they were recruiting, some young guys developing. They've done a really good job of hitting on all of their portal additions. They don't go out and get 30 of them like a school in your state does. It's usually a smaller group, but the ones that they bring in are very, very impactful. And that's happened on the defensive side of the ball. It's the offensive side that's been more surprising to me, that has forced them to have the identity that they do have this season. The offense just is not where myself and a lot of people thought it would be this year for various reasons. I'm sure you'll ask about it, but not to answer your question about the defense. I'm not totally surprised, just because, again, the foundation was laid just a little bit earlier than I anticipated.
Well, let's talk about that offense. Did we just expect too much too soon from Nico at this point? I mean, I think you spend the whole offseason, you're like, this kid looked really good in the bowl game. He's a 5-star. He's going to be great. And he's been good, but I feel like we may have set our expectation level a little too high for a guy who didn't have very much experience.
1,000%. We absolutely did. And my opinion of Nico and his long-term potential has not changed at all this season. I do think he's been a victim to some circumstances around him, other positions on the offense letting him down at times, but he has also played poorly at times as well. There's no doubt about that. He played poorly in the Arkansas game. Just the common theme with this Tennessee offense is it's just everybody takes their turn in letting the rest of the offense down. If Nico is putting the ball on the money, the football is being dropped. Or if the receiver is open and Nico sees the receiver, then it's the protection breaking down, or it has been a bad interception or two at times from Nico, or rushing a throw, not staying in the pocket as long as he should. I feel like early October, especially with that Arkansas loss, obviously, and then Florida was a bit up and down. First half of Alabama was a struggle for him. Got it going in the second half. So I thought that's where you could see the inexperience. And that's what this year has been a reminder of to me in regards to Nico and not winning the Heisman Trophy like a lot of people talked about him over the offseason. It's hard, man. Your Trevor Lawrences are rare. And like Nico has the same ceiling as a guy like that. It's just, I mean, I look around the country and I know the quarterback class maybe isn't the best right now, but I mean, Shador, Quinn Ewers, the big time quarterback names in college football, they've all been doing this for a while now. And I know Carson Beck's had a down year, but he's an older guy, been around the block, and Nico's struggles have come from inexperience, not because of lack of talent or lack of potential or anything along those lines. So yes, it was certainly, we placed too high of expectations on him. But I do feel like right now going into this week, he's actually playing his best football. I thought he was phenomenal last week against Kentucky. And speaking of the receivers letting him down, if there were 2 touchdowns dropped, and if those were caught, and they should have been caught in high school. And if those 2 passes are caught, he's 30 of 38 for around 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions against the Mark Stoops defense, which is down this year, but it's still a Mark Stoops defense. So it's been a roller coaster, but I do feel like he's hitting his stride. We'll see if he can build some consistency.
Another thing we talked about in the summer was Dylan Sampson. I talked about I thought he was very underrated, and you and I both agreed he was due for a breakout season. He has delivered that. He's the SEC's leading rusher. I think 19 touchdowns rushing on the season. Outside of Ashton Genty, maybe no running back in the country having a better year than Dylan Sampson. What's been the biggest key to him breaking out and becoming this top running back in the conference?
Yeah, I just think it's his motor and his mentality. I mean, he is the leader on this football team. There are a lot of leaders on Tennessee's football team, but he's the loudest voice, I would say. You watch them pregame, and when they huddle up before they go through their team warm-ups after the offensive linemen and defensive linemen make it out onto the field, because those are the last 2 positions to make it out on the field for warm-ups. Dylan Sampson's the one speaking to the team when they're all huddled up in the end zone, and they love him. They adore him. So obviously he has a ton of ability, very Alvin Kamara-esque in terms of shiftiness and strength for how compact he is. But it's his will and his motor. I mean, there have been games they almost beat Arkansas because of what Dylan Sampson was able to do in the second half. He put the team on his back in the second half against Florida, did it against Alabama, had another big night last week against Kentucky. I mean, it's just he refuses to lose, quite frankly, and so there's obviously a lot of skill involved. He's going to play football a long time because of it, but I just think mentally he is just so advanced for his age. And all you need to know is that Tennessee put him on the leadership council as a true freshman that fall. And so I think that speaks to his leadership ability and his mentality. And I think that's, yes, he has a lot of skill, but I think that's kind of what sets him apart from a lot of people is just the will not to lose.
You've mentioned that Arkansas game a couple of times, and obviously that was a very tough loss for Tennessee, very unexpected loss. What's something that that Arkansas did in that game that if you're Mississippi State, you need to say, can we find a way to do that too?
Yeah, it's beat up on Tennessee's offensive line. And I realize
I got bad news, Ben.
I know.
That wasn't the correct answer. So.
Yeah, I know Mississippi State fans don't want to hear that given the struggles defensively this season, but that is what Arkansas did. And they really did it on the interior. You know, teams like to drop into the 3-3-6 a lot, or the 3-2-6 against Tennessee a lot. And Arkansas did a good job of having like a hybrid linebacker safety. I'm blanking on his name, but the Jackson State transfer, who's a linebacker, but they used him more as kind of that hybrid role where they would show him in the box and then he would kind of drop out. Because for Tennessee's offense, it's all about numbers. And if you have the numbers advantage in the box, then you're going to run the football. If the box is loaded, then you're going to toss it outside or try to push the football downfield. And Arkansas did a good job of creating some confusion with kind of that hybrid role of where they were using multiple guys to confuse Nico and the offense, and the Jackson State transfer was kind of dropping into coverage at times after being in the box, or if he looked like he was in coverage, then he would come up in the box. But also, they're two big guys in the interior, Eric Gregory, and I'm blanking on the other name as well. But those two guys did a good job of eating up blocks and allowing Arkansas to win against the run, even if Tennessee had the numbers advantage in the box. So if Mississippi State could create some chaos on the interior, and more specifically, the tackles have really struggled for Tennessee this season. They've flustered Nico at times. They've led to Nico looking worse than he is actually playing. It's just been a real struggle for the LSU transfer, Lance Hurd, over at left tackle, and John Campbell Jr. as well. And he's kind of got a chronic knee injury that he's battling, so he'll start the game, but he usually doesn't make it through the game. So if Mississippi State can find a way to generate some pressure on that side of the ball, then that's probably you got to make it an ugly football game, and that's the route for Tennessee right now with the offense looking the way that it is, because just nobody's really getting anything against this defense. I mean, last week they did give up some explosive plays to Kentucky. They gave up a 50-yard run right out of the gates. I thought that they weren't locked in the way that they should be to start the football game. Maybe that bodes well for Mississippi State. Maybe Tennessee gets caught looking at the record, and because after the game it was, why was Kentucky able to generate some explosive plays? Well, we weren't paying attention to the small details. We weren't in our gaps. We weren't aligned. That tells me that you weren't ready to play at the level you needed to at kickoff. So the hope for Mississippi State on that side of the ball would kind of be the same, because when this Tennessee defensive front is locked in, and you saw it in the second half, eventually knocking Brock Vandagriff out, and they've knocked several quarterbacks out. I mean, Tennessee has, I think, every game but Jalen Milroe, except Alabama, I think Tennessee has faced the backup quarterback at some point, and part of it to me is absolutely Tennessee punishing the quarterback throughout the football game. So when they're locked in and fired up, ready to go, it's really hard to move the football. So State's got to find a way to muddy the waters and really confuse Tennessee's offense and generate some issues there through a lack of pass protection for Tennessee.
You talked about maybe a lack of focus at the beginning of the Kentucky game there. Any concern that Tennessee might be looking ahead to next week in that huge showdown with Georgia?
I don't think so. Josh Heupel has always done a good job of, obviously every coach in America sells the let's go 1-0 this week, 1 week at a time. But for the most part, since Heupel has been at Tennessee, outside of the South Carolina game that doomed them 2 years ago, they've done good about keeping the main thing the main thing. That's another buzz phrase that college athletes like to use. The biggest issue this year has been coming off of the open week. I almost think that an open week is a bad thing for them. I think that's a worse thing than maybe looking ahead to Georgia. But there was a lot of hoopla around Tennessee 2 years ago. You had that big win over LSU, and then you were coming back home. Game day was coming to town with Florida. Then game day the next week with Alabama at home. And they handled business flawlessly. Did not get caught looking ahead and pay attention to the outside noise. There's a lot of talk about Josh Heupel in year two, and that's kind of been the status quo throughout his tenure. Handled Oklahoma week really well with all that noise earlier this year. So I believe they do a great job of truly taking each week treating each week as its own week. I mean, Dylan Sampson was on Paul Feinbaum on Tuesday, and it seemed like he genuinely did not know that the college football playoff rankings were being released on Tuesday night. So I think that speaks to how locked in this football team is. And I would be surprised if they got caught looking ahead.
The real question is, did he know it was election day? Because that's what you got to. That's how locked in you want your football facility. Yes. It's election day. I have no idea what's going on there. So.
It's time for a new president.
That's apparently so. All right, Ben McKee, GoVols247, man. Thanks so much for your time, and I always appreciate you coming on with us.
Absolutely. I always appreciate you having me.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.